We have a very special guest today, Stephen Hightower, someone I've respected for years. I appreciate you coming down to the studio.
JP, honored to be here. Obviously, that respect is twofold, and excited to talk about a little bit about my journey, and hopefully we can learn a little bit about each of us today.
All right, let's get into it.
I love it.
You are one of my favorite people, and I love what you do in the whole food sphere. It's just amazing seeing all the things that you've done just in the last 10 years alone. And I know you've done it way before that too. And I just want to talk more about that, the things that I don't know about you, because I just know the things that I've seen recently since I've been in the business.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an incredible journey for me, and I share the same sentiments you say about me. And, you know, getting to know you better over the past few years has been, you know, outstanding for me. And I learned something new today about you. So it's the business, really. I think that's what makes it so fascinating, is the journey of where you come from to establish goals to get to the next spot. Something for me since the day I got into it was my goal was to try to be better than everybody else, and not in a, you know, antagonistic way.
Yeah.
Just continue to set a curve or a bar or whatever, and try to continue to leap over it. I learned that really with my first real restaurant management job, which was at Murphy's University Grill at LSU, working for Mark Frioli and Bennett Murphy.
Ah.
And
it was a bar, right? Murphy's?
Murphy's was a bar,
yeah.
And then they had added a restaurant, I guess probably a year prior to me joining them. But I was running for student government president at LSU and didn't realize that the vet school had a polling location, so I lost by 37 votes. I still would have lost by 2, but lost there 34-1. My one fraternity brother, thank you, came through for me.
Yeah.
But during that election, I got to know Mark Frioli at Murphy's, and I had always wanted to work there. They told me I was too nice to work there, which maybe was right, but
probably
at the end of the day, I went to him and said, "Look, Mark, I've been working in restaurants, you know, all through college, and I feel like I know what I'm doing, or I want to continue to learn more about it. Would you hire me as a manager?" And they didn't hire or hire from without. They only promoted from within. So I was one of the first people ever to get hired in management at Murphy's in the conglomerate there between the grill and Fred's. So, but those guys so committed to doing everything right. I mean, every night stocks were on the stove. We were managing that. They also, part of your management job was you had to have 2 days of cooking, usually on the fry station. So you were integrated into the kitchen. And, you know, they don't know how special that was for me, because I loved the business already, even as a server or busser, which is how I started. But, you know, I'd done some cooking throughout that time in my early job years in the restaurant business. But, you know, I really got to see a new direction, or really just the purity of it. Hard work pays off. You know, if you take the time to care about your ingredients, that matters in the flavor profiles. And, you know, it's a shame. I still think that restaurant was ahead of its time, even then, for what they were trying to do. I mean, steak night was huge. These incredible fillets, the game day steaks you have at Fred's right now.
Those are good steaks.
Those are the same steaks that Murphy's University Grill had. But, you know, it was a care level. And then obviously when you watch those two guys work, to have a bar that's been open as many years as Fred's has now is
it over 35 years now?
Oh yeah, over 35 years. I mean, it's unbelievable accomplishment. You know, I mean, they used to have a T-shirt that had all the bars that had closed while they were open, and I don't think you could fit it on one T-shirt now. It'd probably have to be a whole sweatsuit. But anyhow, that domain, you know, on some unfortunate incidents happened surrounding the bars, and I had to look for another job.
I didn't know that about you. I didn't know you worked at Murphy's.
Yeah. And then during that time, a buddy and I were looking for jobs, and went to Ruth Chris Steakhouse, shot for the stars, and saw Kevin Kimball there, the owner of Stabs and all the Wayne Stabler properties. And he said, "Well, Mr. Tommy Mansour's out of town right now, but, you know, I'll get him to call you when he gets back." And that day, about 2 hours later, Tommy Mansour called me and said, hey, cuz, you want to come in for an interview? I was like, well, sir, I thought you were I just got back. So Kevin was super nice. I know maybe he might have been fluffing me a little bit, thinking that there's no chance this guy will ever get hired. That weekend, LSU beat Florida when they were number 1 in the country. And the next week, I was working 80 hours a week, and Ole Miss kicked our ass.
Oh, wow.
So got hired that next week, and the rest is history, and spent 6.5 years within the Ruth Chris, the TJ Moran franchise group for Ruth Chris Steakhouse. So
that's freaking fascinating, man. 2 things I didn't know about you already.
Okay.
So you've worked with a lot of big names over the years, just to start.
Oh, I had the most incredible mentors throughout my journey in those early years and beyond. But at the end of the day, it's from Mark Frioli to Kevin Kimball to Tommy Mansour to Stan Harris, now president and CEO of the LRA, who was my big boss, or second big boss, with TJ Moran leading that. And I mean, it was hard as hell when I went through it, but I would never be anywhere if it wasn't for what those guys spent the time to teach me through plenty of tough love. But it was a different world back then, and it was, you do it like this or you don't last, and either you overachieve or you don't last. And that sense of urgency, I think, has driven me from that day forward to understand what it's like to get to that successful level. I'm
going to be honest, I'm a little jealous. Like, that is so much knowledge just from those 4 people really, that you just talked about.
Yeah.
That is amazing. The things that they're doing, amazing things. And to be a part of that.
It was outstanding. I mean, look, and it allowed me to really understand my own personality. I mean, I could always communicate. I was, from Catholic High days and being student council president, I was put in a position to be able to learn how to communicate to a certain extent. But, I had never left my mother's womb, in a sense. I mean, I hadn't been to Port Allen for the most part. It was the farthest I'd ever been. And they, I worked in Baton Rouge at the Ruth Chris here for 6 months, and then they shipped me off to Memphis and lived in a hotel for 3 weeks until they decided that I was going to stay there for a longer term, and then, had to establish a new group of friends. And got to stay there for only about 8 or 9 months, and then was off to Nashville. And, Stan called me and said, hey, we want you to go check out Nashville, Tennessee. And, because we think we might move you there now. And I was like, I just want to go home. But because Memphis was cool, plenty of great friends that I still have there. Beauty of the restaurant business, you instantly get 20 or 30 new friends once you walk into one. But I go to Nashville, and the first night, Stan Harris says, look, just go in there and pretend like you're working at the Baton Rouge location, talk to the tables, do table visits, and meet this guy, Paul Pulliam, who was one of the most charismatic general managers I ever worked for. So I'm waiting at the front door, and Paul comes up. Oh, you're from Baton Rouge, you're Hightower or whatever. And I was like, yes, sir. And I was 23 years old.
You were young.
Oh, yeah. And
to be in a position to be trusted like that.
Oh, it was, I'm sure Stan might have some regrets of getting me elevated a little bit too quick there, but it was, I joke still, I created more memos for the TJ Moran company by all my mistakes than maybe anybody in their history. That was when fax machines, you get the memo from corporate, and it's like, oh my God. And I'm reading them, and it's about things that I had done that
every single
nobody else was going to do it.
It's printing out.
But anyhow, that first night I was like, all right, I'll go talk to the tables. And, I walked back and forth, and I had a little bit of air about me to think that I knew a lot of people because I'd come from Baton Rouge where I was quote unquote popular, and kept looking at this man. I was like, my God, is that guy has to be from Baton Rouge. So I finally get the nerve to go walk to the table, and I'm walking to it, and I'm like, holy cow, that's George Strait. And I was like, okay, see you later. I peel off, and anyhow, Paul saw that happen, and he's like, hey, you want to go meet him? And I was like, darn right. And I was into country music at that time, and so that was a huge highlight. And he couldn't have been any nicer, exactly what he is, pure country, and was like, if you want to come over to the bar and have a cocktail or a cigar with us, and he was such a nice man. I ended up becoming friends with his manager, Irv Woolsey, and since he was in the restaurant a lot. But, it was one of those things where I had to learn confidence in my own self and confidence in personality. And, as long as you stay kind to folks, it doesn't matter if they're the vice president of the United States who'd come in at that time to on down to, that John Doe that you have the opportunity to make an impact for with a great meal, So that was a real formative time for me. Hard, very hard.
I'm sure.
And, but at the same time, I was growing up and thankful for this business and Stan Harris and Ruth Chris Steakhouse and TJ and all the others that got me to that point to be able to put me in that position to grow and learn, and allowed for the mistakes and probably some trauma on his end, but it was great for me. And then they moved me back to Baton Rouge, and then I started trying to launch new things.
So how long were you in Tennessee for? In total, you said about 6 years?
2 years, 2.5 years, 2 years and a few months. I did the Millennium, then Valentine's Day after that, and then I was back in Baton Rouge.
Okay.
So,
do you ever miss it?
Oh, it's changed so much from when I was there. Yes, I loved it. It was one of the, even then, it's not what it was. It's not what it is now. I loved it for what it was then. I've been back to visit. Yes. Are you going to have a great time in Nashville? No doubt about it. Is it a lot more commercialized? I used to get off work and go drive down where all that's bollarded off or blocked off now downtown. But it was a big Baton Rouge from the people standpoint, which is really what, makes every city. I always get a kick out of people that think, oh, there's nothing to do in Baton Rouge, or, you lived in Nashville. Why did you ever leave there? And, I love this city, but at the end of the day, JP, it's who do you meet? Who are your friends? Yes, we can go.
Where's home?
Yeah, we can go find plenty more things to do in Nashville, probably, but is your friends and your family going to be there with you along the way? And ultimately, I don't know, in your off time, you're probably going to 2 or 3 places that you became a regular at, and that's how you exhaust your energy. And that's what it was there. they had 3 or 4 great places, but it was all about the group of people that you got to meet and hang around and establish those friendships that, are almost now almost 25 years in the making, that I still have tons of great friends there. And I was only there for a short time, but it was a special group. We used to have a reunion every year. Now it's become every 2 or 3 years, but it was this little window of people from 1999 to 2001 that, we fought the battles. It was the, .com boom. The place was rocking every night.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff happened there. A lady came in one night with a monkey. And
What? An actual monkey?
Yeah. It was a seizure monkey, it turned out. But I was like, I'll never forget calling my boss saying, do I seat this person? They have a monkey with them.
Do I seat the monkey?
And he's like, hell no. And then I was like, well, she's got federal paperwork. Well, I guess you have to then. He's like, but guess where she had to sit next to? Dolly Parton.
Really?
That was the only table we had left. It was right next to Dolly Parton. And she got a kick out of it. She's as sweet as you think she is. She was a great person too. So it was just a interesting place, but a great ride while I was there. But I was glad to come back home. I got to see a lot of different types of cuisine concept. It was that culinary scene was just starting to build out, not to the level of what it is now, but there was some outstanding new things. And it really piqued my interest in different types of concepts. I got the breadth of, steakhouse business is awesome. This Baton Rouge, obviously a huge steak town, but it showed me so many different things, and then, began to move into the next steps of that journey for me. So
that's so cool, man.
Yeah, it was neat.
You've met all these famous people.
Oh yeah.
And a monkey.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever met a monkey.
It was quite the night, I'll tell you that. So.
Oh, wow. So you came back home to Baton Rouge. What did you start doing then? Did you take a break? Did you?
Look, that was probably when I first started touching my entrepreneurial spirit. I'd spent 6.5 years, felt like I was really learning everything about the business. And I'd had so many different types of experiences at that time. And look, you always have a dream, and that was to open up your own restaurant someday. And I started trying to do that. Ended up making friends with Miriam Jubin from the Jubin's family and their restaurant. And, she was very kind. I'm going to speed this timeline up a little bit, but, she started putting me in touch with people to say, could you help this guy out? The Ruth Chris tag, trust me, it still is a great calling card to this day to say that I had that experience, and it's always gotten me in the door. It's given me that instant credibility. I'm happy they let me work there that long to be able to gain that experience. But, because of that, it opened
a lot of
doors. And the first one was, I guess at that time was, Frankie's Doghouse. There was a few other stops along the way in between here that I don't want to forget either, from Bob Baumhauer in Alabama and his Wings Sports Grill. I did a terrible job from him. Bob, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry. I just was never into it. But I went from custom suits to an LL Bean shirt that said Wings on it. And I don't know, my ego got in the way there, but I still feel bad about how terrible of a job I did for him. But I was on an island in Birmingham, Alabama there, and it was a lot harder to make friends there for some reason. And I just was alone, and it was sad. And then I guess this is important. Is there a timeline on this? But I had always wanted to open up a barbecue or breakfast place, and just so happened I was in the hotbed of barbecue with Dreamland Barbecue. And I was totally done with Wings Sports Grill, and three guys from Baton Rouge, Donnie Gyro, Ricky Bearden, and Frankie Collada. Steve Carville, who owns South Down Shopping Center, said, these guys are trying to bring Dreamland to Baton Rouge. You wanted to do a barbecue shop in my shopping center, which was really the first job I totally got fired from. I was the head trash man through college at South Down Shopping Center for Steve Carville. But anyhow, Steve put me in touch with these guys, and just so happened they were coming up to Birmingham that week. And true story, JP. I mean, I had left there. I had no money. I didn't know how I was going to get home, really. Was just navigating through bologna sandwiches, loaf of bread, and a pack of bologna in my apartment until it was closed, till I got out of there. True. And finally made the move, got with Ricky and Frankie and Donnie, and these guys are like, we're bringing Dreamland to Baton Rouge. We want you to come do it. So I did that, and they saved me at that time and put me back in the city. And it was, once again, probably a concept that was ahead of where it needed to be. The Bama hate wasn't in Baton Rouge as much at that time because we weren't good in football. Yeah. But it was an Alabama concept, and it was cool. I mean, it was unbelievable, and the care level, the way they did their ribs. I mean, I watched every brick of the chimneys. That if you're in Baton Rouge, the Bulldog, you can still see the chimneys from the original Dreamland. I mean, I think it was $100,000 a chimney to be able to build it architecturally the right way, where the smoke flowed perfectly out of the building. Mm-hmm. But it was outstanding barbecue and gave me a new taste. So from fine dining to chicken wings to barbecue, and that really is maybe Tigres after that. Mm-hmm. I know this is boring now for anybody listening to this.
I'm not bored at all. I'm so into this right now because all of these places that you worked have had phenomenal food.
It was, look, the guys that, it was after Dreamland or during my time at Dreamland, a gentleman that was a fraternity brother, but I got to know him better in the Ruth Chris days, said, I want to open up a fine dining restaurant. And it was in the old Giovanni's location, which is now Superior Grill on Highland. And that was really bringing the experiences from Nashville into it. But he had partnered with two young chefs at the time, Thomas Jenin and Victor Pickich, and they had worked for Emerald's. And they were uber talented. They were also too young. I think they were 22, 23 years old, but full of piss and venom, and really had unbelievable food. I mean, they had taken their experience from Emerald and said, let's put it on a plate in Baton Rouge. They had a restaurant in Pass Christian, so we rode out 2005 with Katrina inside of Tigres as they watched their business get washed completely away. So it was a devastating time for them. I know hard on them. Thomas has rebuilt a complete empire down in Bay St. Louis and Pass Christian, and doesn't surprise me at all because he was so talented. But we did a unique deal. We had this incredible restaurant, Tigres, and then there was a little spot on the corner of that shopping center that was open. And I went and talked to the owner and said, I want to do a little wine bar. So they allowed us to do that. It became a place we could host private parties, but we were setting the curve in my mind, at least in wine. It was before any other places were like that here, but we were doing half glasses, full glasses, flights. I mean, it was this exploration of the wine industry. Put together the other restaurant where they were, you know, unbelievable Creole and New Orleans, elevated New Orleans cuisine that they were putting on the plates. And it was really a special place. It was just, you know, Katrina, it was just so many things and that were happening and moving at that time. And that one ultimately didn't work out long term. But that began the next platform, which was the Happy Note Lounge. So Brad Watts, one of our fellow Restaurant Association guys and a dear friend of mine, came to me and said, let's reopen the Happy Note, which was for us in college the greatest bar ever, because you went to the Happy Note, had the strongest drinks in town, and then you went to Murphy's or Fred's or whatever the next step was. But everybody started their night at the Happy Note. Jack and Craig, the bartenders there, I still remember them like it was yesterday. But it was such a, you know, crazy time, but it was fun and it worked. But it had closed because Baton Rouge Community College had bought up all the property. So that's where it was. And then Brad had the great idea to open up Happy Note. We went and met with the lady that owned it, bought the name from her for $1,500, and we were on our way. But we went to her little apartment, and Brad did some great negotiating, and then we pulled the trigger. And I was the managing partner, and Brad was you know, the leader of that start. And then that turned into Pee Wee's Pizzeria, which was in between. That I had some other friends that said, hey, we got to do something with you. And that was a complete disaster. I was too into the bar business and having too much fun to ever focus on that. So sorry, Charlie and John, but we tried, but it didn't work out. But that led into Uncle Earl's, which still exists today. So we changed that from Pee Wee's Pizzeria to Happy Note and Uncle Earl's. And yeah, a lot of stuff here. Sorry.
Oh my God. I'm just letting you talk, because the more you talk, the more I go, I didn't know any of these things.
Yeah. And
You've had such a colorful history, and you've done it all. And you've done it well.
There are days I drive around town and think, okay, I was in that building, you know, and it's fun. And thank God a lot of them are still there. But I had drifted away from the bar, from the restaurant business. And truly, that was really what I was the most passionate about. I was sitting outside of the Happy Note doing nothing, just waiting for a delivery truck one day. And you know, I was unhappy with my life and had suffered consequences because of it, drinking too much. And, you know what happens. You don't drink and drive. It's not a good thing. And, you know, made those fatal mistakes from the standpoint of, you know, for personal consequences that I had to deal with, that didn't change for a long time. And I was just, you know, I'll never forget one of my best friends, Will Eglin. His mom saw me I don't know what we were at, a wedding or something. And it was one of our friends getting married, I think. And I don't know, maybe she just knew I was unhappy with myself. You know, I felt like I wasn't achieving anything, even though we had a very successful place. Monetarily, it was great. Yeah. You know, and I tell people all the time, it's never been super hard in a sense to create the concepts, get them successful. But it's getting over that next hurdle. And then personally for me, I just felt like I was spinning my wheels. And, you know, Brad, I'm sure felt the same way. We were having way too much fun, and it wasn't the best situation. And I was better than that in my own mind, because my whole life I had, you know, felt to what you do a lot of what you do in your life, which is it's about impacting others too, you know. And we built great staffs. All of the people that have worked for me over the years. It's, you know, the friendships, the times that we went to battle together to create a great experience for others. It was still in there in that bar, but I knew there was more. So,
it just wasn't fulfilling enough.
Yeah, but I got to meet like Bruce Attinger, who brought Outback to Louisiana and beyond. I got to meet him because he would come into the bar from time to time because Outback was right down the street. My tennis captain, Chris Bourgeois. I met so many. You had the time because it was a small little shotgun bar to make these relationships that spent the time talking to people. And once again, these are networks that ultimately
that led to bigger things.
Well, they create opportunities, you know. And one of those guys was this guy, Mike Armshaw, who still plays in a band to this day. Cool dude, but just a great man. And he said, and I was a member at Bocage Racquet Club because I'd played tennis all through high school and beyond. Couldn't afford it, but I'd gotten a membership out there. And Mike says, look, we want you to sit on the food and beverage committee at Bocage. Our food is not good. Mm-hmm. And, or they weren't succeeding like they thought they should. So I go to the first meeting of the food and beverage committee, and I listened to what they had to say, and, I didn't know what to do. I'd never been a part of anything like that before. And so the second meeting I show up, and, there looks like there's a few more important people at the table, and I'm looking at their numbers. They're losing their tail. And, I come out of this high achieving Ruth Chris where, we were navigating numbers to say, Stan, if we were off 1%, you need to stay in that restaurant to go find where your inventory is wrong or whatever else. But so I go to the meeting, and Mike finally says, Stephen, we got you here for a reason. Why don't you tell people what you think about what's happening here? And like I said, I knew him. I knew maybe one or two people at the table, but there was some people I didn't know. But I said, well, based on what I'm looking at on this P&L, whoever the chef or kitchen manager or manager of this food and beverage department needs to be fired, and whoever the general manager is that's allowed this to happen probably needs to go too. And then they all started laughing, and they had just gotten rid of the general manager and brought a new man in, Mr. Ed Gaskell. And they said, well, how would we fix this? And I was like, well, I was still at the happy note in a sense. And I said, well, I'll come do it. And well, how are we going to pay you enough? And I'm like, if you only knew what I was making at this time. But at the end of the day, I said, well, I'll be your chef and your front of the house manager. Well, can you do both of that? I was like, just trust me, we can figure it out. And, I really started. So I took that job, got in the kitchen at Bocage, worked probably the first 6 months where I was solely based in the kitchen, creating recipes, and from simple. My first day there, the special was a hamburger steak and mashed potatoes. But it was that poignant moment where we sold 20 hamburger steaks and mashed potatoes that day, and people thought it was the greatest thing ever. I'm like, okay, it's just a hamburger steak. I've been doing this for years, but okay, this could be a win here. And at the end of the day, it was one of those things like, hey, people like what I put out to them. And then that continued to evolve. They had never had anything nice. It was just it was a country club where club sandwiches and, easy burgers and things like that were what they did. And, obviously my passion was coming out of Ruth Chris. I said, can we fix this I want to do a fine dining night. And, they had a giant open space with brown tile, and, it was just stale and dusty. And so we cleaned it up, and the only thing I had to work with were fake ficus trees. So I cordoned off a portion of the dining room, surrounded it with fake ficus trees, put white linen on the tables, and had a fine dining night. And we started doing that every Friday, and it took off. And ultimately, Gustav hits the club, destroys it. We get to remodel the whole place, which gave me a new platform of being able to get into the not the interior design and see what was happening, have a little bit of a say in how it's going to look next. And that was really cool. And it really gave me a platform from wine dinners that, we would get 120 strong to, just really creating something that was bigger than me from the standpoint of where my career was going. And, if it wasn't for those people, the membership there that supported me, maybe it doesn't work, but they believed in what was happening, and they came out there and chose Bocage Racquet Club to where they wanted to spend their extra money, and we turned it into something special. I think we tripled or quadrupled sales in a couple of years, and I was back in full bear on the restaurant business.
I'm loving this. So how I know you, we haven't even gotten to that part yet. Like all of these things that you've learned, and the people that you've met, and the relationships that you've built, and the people that you've I'm blown away right now. Like I really am. Oh my God. Like from Murphy's and Fred's to Ruth's Chris to moving to Tennessee to South Downs to Uncle Earl's, and everything, every place that you've talked about so far, you talk about the people more than I think anything else. Obviously you talk about the food, but that's where your passion for people it's very inspiring. It's always been inspiring. So when I met you for the first time, we talked about people a lot. That's where I was like, we're going to vibe on this. Like you and I, we're very similar when it comes to that part of things.
It's just, I think that everybody has the opportunity to say how lucky they are to see who was important to them in their life, whether that's your mom and dad. Obviously, they've supported me throughout this whole journey, which I've tortured them through all the different mistakes that I've made and relationship mistakes and all these different things, or not getting married when they wanted me to. I'm 50. I'll be 52 next week. I'm still mom trying to pump out a kid. Maybe we'll see what happens. Lucky to have a little bit younger wife, but hopefully we can be blessed with that someday. But the restaurant business was always something that was never expected for me. I was the student council president of Catholic High. I tell people I peaked in high school, or maybe I tried to run for president of LSU and lost. If I would have won that, who knows where I would be right now, right? Truly.
I don't think you've peaked yet, man.
I don't know where I would have. Maybe I would have done something completely different, but it didn't work out. And I do trust the process, or trust the journey in a sense of where I've landed. I know my mom hates it when I say I don't regret the fact that I've, made the mistakes of getting a DWI or, other issues that I've had along the way financially, or making mistakes with money and different things like that. But all of that is the makeup, right? It
is.
It's the makeup of being able to tell that story. Look, the DWI and put me in jail for 2 weeks. I had to go to prison for 2 weeks.
You grow up a lot when that happens.
Damn right. I was the best damn dishwasher in that prison, though. And got out of it and knew how bad it could be, because that's bad. And
you need to learn the lessons.
I haven't really shared that publicly with that many people, but this is part of what allows me to relate and manage people and honestly care about their development. And because I do believe truly, and Peter Sclafani said it at a thing I went to, the chef, about the American dream. It is, you can make mistakes and you can recover. I went to prison, and then as my journey took me into building a company or helping build a company in Citigroup Hospitality that had 7 unique concepts and 15 operations. So anything's possible. It takes great friends, great family to continue to share the belief in that. But at the end of the day, I don't think I finished that story. Miss Eglin said, you've got to be happy with yourself. And, when I became that person that understood that this is who I am, this is who I can be, and don't settle, and let's push that, let's hit the accelerator and let's go. And, that's when I found my wife, and found more great people that can influence me. And just like you, I look up to the young people in this industry right now, like you and Trent. Look, this is what you guys are building, and what you're building right here in the studio. But I think I don't have any doubt that you're going to be as great as you want to be, because you have that core belief, which so many of us do in this industry, which is, how do we impact people? How do we impact the industry as a whole? Because nobody can eat at every restaurant every night, right? We've got to share the love and show the talents that exist all over. And, my journey has set me off on, you're just getting half of it now, and then we'll go into the City Pork days and all that kind of stuff if we have time. But
because that's how I know you, is through those City Pork days.
That's right.
But all of this, so I love that you talk about the mistakes that you've made. I've made so many mistakes in my life, so many. And at the beginning, when I was younger, I used to beat myself up for them. And then now looking back on it, I wouldn't be the person that I am today if I didn't make those mistakes. If I didn't get in trouble, if I didn't, be probably an asshole to people sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like when you were like in college, like you don't learn how to treat people. You just see other people doing things and you try to emulate that. Well, if this guy's acting this way, I'm going to act this way too. And then you do it for a little bit and you're like, that's just not who I am. And then you watch the people that you hurt, and then you never want to do that again. So then as we get older, or as I get older for sure, I think about the person that I never want to be, but I also think about the person that I can now help other people become. And just motivating your staff alone, and you were just talking about that, it's something so fulfilling about taking someone who's lost, so to speak, because you're young, you don't know what you want, right? And just being able to kind of channel that nervous energy that they have a lot of potential too, but in the moment they don't feel like they do. like they're down on themselves, like they maybe hate their life for whatever reason. And then if you can kind of help them through that stage and then watch them come back in 5 or 10 years, that's my favorite thing, is when someone comes back and says, I didn't appreciate what I had when I was with you, but now I know why.
Right.
And then there's nothing better than that, because now they're going to be successful people. Now they're going to help other people. And then that's the impact that I think we have in this business, is we get to be in front of these people at the most, what do you call it? Like pivotal moment in their life, really, like the whole college era, like that's where most of my employees are, and it's in college. So did you really know what you wanted at 22, 20, no one did. You thought you did. I want to make a lot of money. I want to drive a fancy car. I want a really big house, but you don't know how to get there. And then when you actually get to that point, you realize those things aren't very important at all. The relationships that you have, way more important than anything else, and then
I gave a talk the other day to the fine people at Our Lady of the Lake Hospital. It was their black coat ceremony for the attendants that, that are greeting you in the hospital, or helping you check in and taking you around the hospital or wherever you need to go. Basically the do-it-all folks that, that we wanted to talk through hospitality and what that matters. But, it just made me understand, and somebody else wiser told me this, but it really resonated, is that, I said, I've been trying to get rich for 30 years. And I said, do you guys think I'm rich? A lot of people do. And they, whatever, they didn't know what to say. And I was like, well, I don't know what you look at from being rich, but having this opportunity to speak to you people, or having the opportunities I've had over time, that is the true enrichment, and understanding that that's what's the richest about life.
It is. It's not money.
That's right. I mean, look, I feel like all of those things are going to happen. It's never let me down that I can be on my last dollar and eating bologna sandwiches, and something's going to happen, as long as you continue with your own personal goal and morality sake, where you just keep trying to pay it forward and make a difference. And, look, the past year's been really hard for me. And, I'm still trying to figure it out a little bit. So, but I'm very lucky to have opportunities that are out in front of me, and know that I just got to stay focused on what my mission is. But to your point, am I not finished? No, hell no, I'm not finished.
Oh no, you're not finished, man. I think you're just starting.
I think about how many games Nick Saban won after he turned 50. So that's the way I kind of look at it.
50 is not old, man.
No, it's the prime time. I got to make it happen. My friend Will Eglin tells me that all the time.
I'm extremely excited that you came by today, because I know more about you now than I ever thought I did. And we've been friends for years now, and I didn't know any of this. Like, this has been, once again, I told you earlier, it's extremely inspiring to hear your story, because I feel like I've gone through very similar things in life, to how I've gotten here. And if you don't talk about this with other people, you assume that everyone has got it so easy. I'm sure when people look at you, they go, that guy's had an easy life, like they just see you now at speaking events, and they just go, well, that's Stephen Hightower. He's blah, blah, blah. He does this and X, Y, Z. But it's so human, I guess, to know like the things that you had to overcome in order to get to where you are today. And we haven't even talked about your most recent, I guess, adventures.
Yeah. I mean, it was, once I'd gotten back into thinking about restaurants as my sole focus after Bocage, then, that's when I had, during my time there, is when this lady, Miriam Jubin, had reached out to me. And, I think consulting, in a sense, wasn't really much unless you were working for, one of the big 6 accounting firms. You heard Anderson Consulting, or, all these different places. But, for the restaurant industry, there wasn't that many consultants in a sense, but the industry was growing. So I think that was kind of predicated on that. And, she said, look, I've met this doctor who owns Frankie's Doghouse, and, he needs help. He's a doctor and can't run his business every day. And could you just go over there and help him out? And, pro bono, sure, I'll go talk to him. And, I wanted to always, once again, own my own business. And once I got into what he was doing, I was like, look, it's a small little shack on Perkins Road, but there was something there, and it was maybe that perfect segue. And one of my best friends, who we were busboys together and started in the business together, really, Brian Reams, he and I got together and said, let's invest in Frankie's Doghouse, and the doctor was willing to sell it, so we bought that from him. Modest amount of money at the time, and that was when it really launched the entrepreneurial side of things for me, where I was helping him, but it turned into a purchase. And look, we did fine. It was a place that, if we made $1,000 a month, it was great. If we lost 2,000, it wasn't so great, but it wasn't ever going to be that big of a catastrophe. But really, it was, we had fun with it. I know you like to do things that, you're passionate about because they're fun to do. Mm-hmm. And, it was this little small microcosm of a business in a sense compared to where we are now. But it was a great learning tool for me to be able to run that. And, it gave me a platform to say, okay, what's my next step? So I had bought a house during that time at some point and had an extra piece of property on the side of it. And I wanted to continue to do more things. So I sold the piece of property to a member of Bocage, who's one of my also mentors and dear friends, Mr. Don Dawson and his wife, Barbara. And all of these things are connected too, so maybe I can catch that on the backside. But Don's in construction, right? And so I did Leroy's. So I found this location that was, God rest his soul, this man, David Trusty, who just passed from a battle with cancer. He said he was Stan Harris's brother-in-law. And, I know Stan had followed my career to a certain extent, was always very kind to me as I did different things and would leave notes for me or send me something in the mail. And, so Stan, I think, had prodded David to come say, look, let's find another location. He wants to stay in the restaurant business. And I think, so he found this location where, right behind the original Walk-Ons. Majestic hotel. I mean, you look at this place, I'll never forget, we've got our sign up the first day for Leroy's fried chicken. And
it was really good fried chicken, by the way.
Well, thank you. I think so. I mean, I just found that menu the other day in some old stuff when I was going through my office stuff, and it was really a great menu. And, unfortunately the location just never could work. Mm-hmm. But, Miriam had set me up with Frankie's, and then during the time of Leroy's, I was still at Bocage, which was a big mistake, trying to work, own a business and not work in it, mm-hmm. Especially one that I'd really put a lot of money into personally from in perspective. But at the end of the day, it was, she said, well, I've got this Nottoway plantation. They need help. And so I go out to Nottoway Plantation, which was the owner of Nottoway at that time was the first or second richest man in Australia. He owned all the media companies in Australia. And he had very high paid consultants that would come down. One guy, they were both from Russia. One was a Asian Russian man, and I can't remember his name offhand, but Dmitry was the other one. I'll never forget him. And super intense, always in perfect suits, coming down. What do you think about this? And, mm-hmm. And it was really, I don't even know if the people over there know, it was stuff that I had talked about with them, which y'all need to put tennis courts out here, because I was an avid tennis player, mm-hmm. create a resort style feel, because you have this incredible restaurant and the history of it. And they had an unbelievable chef David Reyes, that was there, and he was from Chicago, and he's super successful to this day, but he just wasn't doing food that really fit the Louisiana theme of what visiting a plantation home in Louisiana is. And, I made the recommendation that we needed to have more Louisiana stuff. David didn't want to do it. He moved on, but we created a menu with, if you're visiting Louisiana, you want to taste it. Yes. So that ended up working out. I think a few years later, after I ended that engagement, they ended up building tennis courts and doing a lot of those things that, I talked to those guys about. And so even though I had no real impact other than I was happy to see that happened, and maybe it was my idea that it came about. But that too is a great experience, traveling every day back and forth, at the same time still working at these other jobs. But during that period, Leroy's was just a complete failure. So I was very fortunate not only to sell Frankie's to some local investors, also found a local investor to take that lease and property off my hands, and I got a little bit more money in the bank. But, you know, look, I had gotten money from other people to do these projects, not only just my investment. And, you know, one lady in particular that was worked for me at Ruth Chris Steakhouse, and still hurts me that I was never able to live up to what she invested. And, you know, that was very, very meaningful to her. And those are the things, as I look back on my career, those are the mistakes that you can never erase, you know. And I hate it that it happened, but it was business. You know, I don't know if she'll ever understand how that all goes down, but I still tried. But, you know, what did I know well that I knew made money at that time? I was carrying tons of debt. Also, the burden of trying to make her right. And so I found a property on Coursey Boulevard that was the old Happy's Irish pub. And I got in there for basically nothing and a cheap lease. And, you know, I said, well, I know the bar business. Let's do the bar. I know it can make money. But once again, hastily did it, allowed me to pay down some of the debt that I had. It was just successful enough to be able to do that. But, you know, never really worked out. It was there for a while. Sold it to another young man in the business at that time, and he made a good run of it, I think, for a couple years. But, you know, that was part of the journey as well here. And then that all falls apart, and Miriam says, well, you need to come check out this new restaurant, City Pork, that just opened up. They need help. They have, you know, a big time investor that had worked with a young entrepreneur, Chase Lyons, and, you know, they just need help figuring out because they are so freaking busy. And JP, look, it was really the first day. I said, all right, I'll go check it out tonight. And well, Trey Williams, the owner and partner of it, had come over to my office at Bocage, and he was beside himself. And I said, look, I'll be there tonight. Let's go see what's happening. And I spent a few days going in and out of there, but it was magical. Like, anytime people ate that food, they look you in the eyes. Man, this is so good. Everything is so good. And credit Trey and Chase. I mean, they took the time to learn how to become the best sandwich shop. Chase went and worked in Austin at the Noble Pig to learn his trade. And, you know, Trey was passionate about charcuterie, which nobody was doing that in Baton Rouge at that time, and doing it right like he did. And, you know, now it's on every menu. But we were, in a sense, those guys were forerunners. I was the one that helped come in the beginning and to learn how to execute and set the systems that I had learned from all of my past experiences to help them get over the hump, and incredibly successful. But, you know, Trey was new to the restaurant business. He had a young family and multiple children, and had another one on the way at the time. And dealing with employees there was hard on him. And, you know, finally he's like, I'm done with it. You want to invest in this? So went out and found the money for some other folks and got going as one of the partners of City Pork. I guess about a month and a half, 2 months after they opened, we had executed that deal. February of 2014. And then we were off and running. And it was just Chase Lyons and I. And Chase is one of the hardest working guys I know in the business, especially during that time. He was so dedicated to what we were doing. And we were uber successful through that. And then I lived over in the 100 Oaks area off 7 Oaks, and the Dempsey's location had come up for lease. Saw the sign go up that day, and I called Bo Box and said, what's that look like? And, you know, Bo didn't have to rent that building to me. I had no credit probably, and nothing to stand on other than a belief and a dream that we could continue to build City Pork, and credit Trey and Chase with what they'd built there, because that gave us the credibility to get him to agree to do a lease with, you know, I was probably in my early to mid 30s that time. And, or no, I was older than that, but whatever. But Bo Box didn't have to believe in us, and he did. He gave us that shot, and, you know, that building is still under lease today and still thriving. But that was where, you know, it was the original City Pork Deli, 5 sandwiches, 2 salads, not much. And I knew how great the base of what they were doing was. And we were, you know, they were on to something. I mean, at any given point, the sandwiches were always going to hold the day from a business perspective. But Ryan Andre, chef that had just come available on the market, and what could we do to make this even better? And Ryan was instrumental in creating dishes along with another chef, Troy Dino, at that time, that really put together the original menu. Ryan is still probably one of the best chefs I've ever worked with. I'll say that, not to offend anybody, but his palate, his version of food was really aligned with how I tasted things, and Chase too, for that matter. We loved it. I mean, and Ryan was a superstar, and we put together that menu that changed the game. It wasn't just the sandwiches. Now it was more of the culinary driven dishes.
I think that location is what changed it from just a sandwich shop.
That's right. And but during the course of trying to get that open, Trey always called and checked in, and I have integrity, and I knew it wasn't my concept that I started. It was Chase and Trey's. And he called one day and said, well, come check it out, man. We're doing all the remodel right now. And we had arrangement with someone I'll leave unnamed that was going to be a part of the business too. And they were going to invest, but something happened. I can't even remember what it was now. And they pulled out at the last second, and we had no more money left. We'd already spent everything that we had. And I was like, Chase, I don't know how we're gonna get this thing open. And, Trey had, had his fourth child, was back operating, and I was like, we got to get Trey back. And I think it's fair to him because he started this deal. And so we did. And, his financial contribution allowed us to get the game going officially. And the rest is history as far as the growth of City Pork. And, long story short, Trey and I broke up after, I guess, 3 or 4 years, but we had opened up a third City Pork in Industrialplex, which was called City Pork Kitchen and Pie. Everybody was upset when we closed that one down. It was just, we were always extremely busy for lunch, but we never could figure out how to make money. It was a huge complex, and without a dinner crowd there, it was just tough.
Yeah.
And, you had to have X amount of people working for lunch because everybody that worked there had an hour, and we had to get them in and out. And the financial model of that business itself just did not work out. And, it was a big learning lesson. But when we broke up, we had just opened up South End Pokey Shop, which was something that, we'd been reading about in all the little trade magazines. Pokey or poke, whatever you'd like to call it, was so hot and popular. And we had met, Trey had made a relationship with some consultants at that time, Charlie Candelas and Frank Fronda. And he said, let's do this Pokey Shop. And the cool thing is that we're going to go to Chicago. These guys work Pokey. Oh, he met him at the National Restaurant Association show. And we're going to hire them, and they're going to help us develop this concept. And one of the coolest experiences ever. So we went to Chicago. They had an existing location that they had already opened. And so we worked in that building, went to their offices, created mission statements, every recipe. We would do that. And then we'd work through all of the different pieces of what it really takes to open up a restaurant. And despite Trey and I's ultimate breakup, that the experiences I got during that time with him were priceless. With Chase were priceless. Chase had been kicked out a little bit earlier than I did, but it was the best thing that ever happened to him. I think he would agree with that now. It hurt all of us like hell having to go through that during those times. But, he got the platform to be able to go out and open Soji and start his domain. So once again, everything happens for a reason.
It does.
That reason for me was this young man, Patrick Veluzzo, who I'd coached in baseball as a youngster, came over and said, look, my family's looking, I'm looking to move on from the McDonald's. I think they're going to start selling all their stores, and I want to create the next phase of my life. And, at the time he was entertaining, trying to get a franchise with Walk-Ons, and was looking at a lot of different things, but that was top of mind as they were beginning their ascent in the franchising world. And, Brandon and what they did were, off the charts. But, Patrick took me on that journey. He was looking from Atlanta to Charlotte and had to go talk to the wife. You want to move to Atlanta? This is a great opportunity. And, at that time on that trip to Atlanta, everything had fallen apart for Trey and I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. I can move to Atlanta and do this, but I'd been through the Bob Baumhauer's deal and it was a sports bar. And, at that time, everybody, I don't know, nobody was going to Tiger Stadium. Everybody was watching on their big screen TV. It was the evolution of that. And I just wasn't feeling it. But while we were on that trip, we were eating out at places that were nicer. But one of them in particular was very similar to City Pork. And, I didn't know how anything was going to play out. Trey and I were separated. We didn't know what, working through lawyers or whatever it was at the time, trying to figure out how this split up would work. And, it wasn't the funnest time. It was hard. I was pigeonholed in my home. I couldn't go to the restaurants anymore. And, I've got friends calling me, or my father-in-law says, I've got some friends coming in from North Dakota, meet them at the restaurant. I couldn't really tell him what was going on.
Yeah. Not
only just, it was embarrassment, or I don't know if, what was going on around that, but, I was embarrassed. It was hard. 3 months of loneliness really, and not knowing what my next step would be, because I didn't know the outcome of where my ownership percentage was, what was going to happen with that. I knew probably that it was just going to disappear and I was screwed, but I still had hope. I met with every banker in town trying to figure out how I could get my own loan to buy City Pork from him, or South Fin at that matter. But at the end of the day, South Fin was hot at that time, and Trey really enjoyed the concept, and he said, let's buy City Pork. And I'd made the mistake of telling anyone, I think it's worth $1 million. So he said, give me $1 million. I was like, okay, well, that's going to be fun. Long story short, when that happened, it was, during this trip to Atlanta with Patrick Veluzzo. And, we came back from that. I said, Patrick, I'm sorry. I'm just not into this, even though I know it could be great. I hope you do it. Good luck, but it's not for me. And, he was going through all of that side of it. And then one day I was at the house and saw his number pop up on the phone. And, he said, what you doing? And he goes, that City Pork still for sale? I said, yeah. And I'd never forget, I dropped to one knee because I got emotional because I was so beside myself. Didn't know where I was going to do. And it kind of become my identity in a little sense. But he said, all right, tell him I'll write him a check tomorrow or something like that. Obviously, it doesn't happen like that.
Yeah.
It takes 3 months. But at the end of the day, it was that hope. And it ended up working out. We got through plenty of different types of negotiations. But all in all, Patrick was able to execute that deal and allow me to continue to be a part of it and in the managing partner role. And, he was a fascinating person to work with, incredible, smart guy. His father made all of their children get professional degrees, so he was a CPA by trade. Part of maybe Trey and I's issues were we were all three of us, Chase, him, and we were all visionaries, or we all had different ideas. And we, in this scenario, Patrick had his ideas, but at the end of the day, he was more analytical, and I could be on the subjective side of things to create and do what we wanted to do. And that was an incredible journey that, ended last year in November. But when it ended, we had done, 7 unique concepts, and he allowed me to pursue every dream that I could have ever imagined. And, sometimes those things become stale, and maybe it was stale for him, and I needed something fresh. But we did awesome stuff. From commissarying products to, creating businesses for the sake of multiple needs, because we had this deal with the City Pork at LSU. We needed a building with a new kitchen. We had to make the decision to shut down the City Pork Deli because we thought the interstate was going to hurt us, and we needed to sign a new lease there, and it just wasn't going to work out. But, we went from a company that had about 80 employees or less to one that ultimately peaked at about 450 and about 40 managers. And some really cool concepts. He had seen a chef in Atlanta, Frank Ford, I think is his name, Ford Fry, Frank Fry. And that, I'll never forget one of those first times we got together pulling up the website, and he had an oyster bar, and he had a little tavern, and he had all these different things, and, some fine dining places. So, that was something that he was interested in, and he knew that I was definitely going to be interested in that. And, he allowed me to create, and that belief and trust in what we could put together, not only from the people matrix, but the food matrix was, once in a lifetime opportunity, and allowed me to not only, live out the dreams, but, get to that next level, in my opinion, of where I was anyhow, in the industry as a whole and in business. So learned a lot. And then November this year or last year, things changed, and we had to figure out the next step, or I had to figure out the next steps, and was lucky that the University Club, had an opportunity, and have settled in there, and they've been very kind to allow me to pursue, a few little different things to keep my career interesting, and allows me to be able to go out and speak to young people, whether that's at a high school like French Settlement, where I got very much enriched by hearing from those students, or participating in LRA, from mentoring a pro start school to, being involved in numerous boards around town that really shape our industry in Baton Rouge. So, there's probably a ton, believe it or not, even after an hour, that I left out, but that's really the capsule of where we are to this day. But, still searching a little bit, but, believe I'm going to put it together.
We're definitely going to have to do a part 2, because holy smokes, the things that I've learned today.
And my school at LSU, I forgot about that. So, or the class that we have going that we want to evolve. So
we, so the common theme that I'm getting from you is, no matter what happens, you always have hope, and the drive that you have, and the person that you are to continually be better. Like, I just can't wait to see what happens next for you. But I will tell you this, to kind of tie it all back together, of where I've been in my journey with the restaurant business. So Frankie's was very popular, doing very well. So before I even thought about opening Mom's, I got my master's degree from Southeastern. So I was down there. There was a place in a shopping center called Mike's Doghouse. So I almost bought Mike's Doghouse.
That's awesome.
Because of Frankie's. Okay.
Right.
So that was, and then we just ended up downtown somewhere. And then that's where we started putting down roots for our moms, your moms at the time. So that's how Frankie's influenced me. And then when we were opening up our Baton Rouge location, we looked at Leroy's, and it wasn't until you said something about Leroy's that I go, we've already met. I completely forgot that was you.
That's right.
At Leroy's. That's how I know the chicken was so good, because I went in there for like weeks on end, trying to see the traffic and trying to see the clientele, and
that's just, when I first
just trying to make, make a good decision, The food was amazing. Like, we had people that worked for us at the bar, the house in Tigerland, that worked there as well. And they were always raving about it. So the food was always amazing. So when you said Leroy's, I was like, oh my God, dude. Yeah. So we go back to Leroy's. And then
that's right, because we put together the Catholic Eye Connection at that time when I first met you. That's right.
I completely forgot about that, man, up until today. And then now the whole City Port connection that you have. My father-in-law, so my wife is Chase Lyons' first cousin.
That's right.
And my father-in-law will take credit for Chase going to Austin. To work there, because Chase wanted to open up a restaurant, and he was like, well, if you don't know anything about it, then, you're not going to be successful, that type of conversation. So Chase took his advice and went and did a long stint in Austin.
Yeah.
And then he opened up City Pork, because I thought I met you through City Pork, but dude, Leroy's.
And that's where it was.
Like, holy cow. It was, didn't you have like poutine or something there? Yeah, that's right. Because that was delicious. Yeah, wait. Your concepts have always been ahead of their time, for sure. Like, the food's always been amazing. The hospitality's been even better. Thanks. And now knowing a little bit more about your background, I kind of understand why all of your concepts are successful. It's not just about great food. That's very important. But it's the people.
No
and
doubt.
Like, I love that part. And just, I've been waiting to say that. I was like, oh my God. Like, how it all just comes like full circle now.
Well, I joke about Leroy's at my grad school. because, it didn't work out still. But it was just all part of the journey.
Yeah.
But it was really, where right now where I'm help teach this class at LSU through the School of Business, which is a restaurant management leadership program, basically. And it's accredited 3-hour elective, but you have to commit to a year, and we've been able to double our enrollment for the second year that we're doing this. And a guy I didn't mention, Ruffin Rodrigue, was very instrumental in, being a mentor over the years and different things and watching his success. But, sadly he passed after COVID. And right now we're working on, trying to get, to honor Ruffin and really name the program after him ultimately. But the moral of that story is that the business piece of it, and maybe you see this in your restaurants right now, it was, we have great managers and we have great people. They understand that hospitality piece. But you look, the last 3 years of what we've all been through, 5 years if you go to COVID, but I think coming out of that, 2021 was the busiest year anybody would ever have in this business, maybe forever. All right, as far as volume of people, because everybody was getting back out, but we didn't have anybody to work. So it was the workforce development piece of it that, got triggered during that. And then you're fighting, inflation and the extreme prices, and having to adjust on the fly to understand when is the right time to raise your prices, or can you get away with that? Or are we going to price ourselves out of the market? All of this fear and uncertainty with the economy at that time. And then, continue to face some of those same challenges today in both categories, from your workforce to quality managers to people that understand what it's like, that, what we can have families, we can have balance of, have a balance of life. And I think us as owner operators have had to adjust how we make people happy in our industry. I mean, I used to work 60 hours. I never thought anything of it. Yeah. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it.
It was the norm.
It was. I mean, you worked
100, then you started complaining.
Exactly. I'll never forget figuring out my first paycheck at Ruth Chris. I think I made $4.12 an hour, for real. But I never thought about it. I was honored to be there and honored to be a part of it. So, I think money for everybody has become, obviously it's important, but, I try not to consume myself with it. But at the end of the day, when we first started City Pork, look, uber successful, we never knew where the money was going. Yeah. Trey had invested the majority of those dollars in that deal. And, I get his frustration. We never could figure it out. We knew we were making money because the bank account was there, but when it went down to nothing, like, where did it all go? And it's that business piece that I think so many of us in this industry, because, you can start from dishwasher to go all the way up. And, you just have to know simple math, really. Yep. And if you can handle that and be able to communicate and motivate people to work, that want to work for you and believe in your culture. But there is the other part of it, this 50% restaurant smart, 50% corporate smart, and understanding the business piece of it, which Patrick allowed me to gain a much better knowledge of that, investing in technology to make that front of mind. But it all went back to, I had the opportunity with Professor Gabe Piccoli at LSU to go to Cornell and teach a workshop with him. And I saw what, the number one hospitality institute in the world, really, in Cornell University has. And I'm thinking, Louisiana, why would we not have this here at the flagship university? And, a lot of people said there's no way you can get that going. And, but through Gabe's help and our drive to make a difference from that standpoint, we were able to create this first class last year and now into year 2 and hopefully beyond. But there are people, JP, that really want to be in our industry that have, it could have been the stepping stone, but this is a great profession. Everybody looks at it as the stepping stone that I made extra money while I was in college or whatever, but it can be a rewarding, outstanding career. Yes, we work when a lot of people are having fun, but at the end of the day, we get to do some of the most dynamic, fun things. And I know you'll agree. You get to play in real estate. We got to play in architecture, logistics, finance, marketing. It's not just
food anymore.
Not just food. And
you learn a lot about a lot of different industries. It really does open a lot of doors. Like I know for, let's say 80% of the people that come through and they work with us, I know it's a stepping stone. I know it's going to get you through college. It's going to pay your rent. But I also know for 20% of people, it's going to make you extremely happy.
It will.
You know, and those are the people that we're looking for. And I love that you were talking about all the challenges that we're having with having to increase menu prices and all of the labor issues that people have and finding the right people. For the longest time, for like 2 years, at least 2 years, every business owner that I talked to, especially in the restaurant business, the complaint was nobody wants to work, right? Mm-hmm. And then I was telling my partner Trent about it, and we could have either accepted that fact or we could have believed that there's really good people out there who still want to be a part of something great. And that's where the last year has shifted for us, is focusing more on the hospitality that we want to put out, because it's not just enough to have great food. I've been telling this to a lot of people. I want to be known for how we make you feel when you leave, right? Because if you can focus on that and you find the right people who believe the same thing that you believe, you create an amazing experience for everyone involved. The people working, the people coming to dine with you, like you create an amazing experience. And then now the other side that you were talking about that really hits home for me is it's not just about the food or the hospitality. You have to be good at the numbers. You know, if you don't focus on the numbers, your business won't succeed. You know, you could have a great time, you could have a great product, people could love where you're coming from, but if you're not negotiating food prices, if you're not raising menu prices, if you're not keeping up with what you need to, eventually you won't have a business to come back to. And then all the people that rely on you to live, basically, to feed their families, they won't have that either. So there comes that time where you were talking about pricing yourself out of the market, where you have to, because that's why we only have one price increase a year, is because we always felt like we don't want to raise the price on our guests, you know, because we know they're going through things too. Sure. But if you don't, you won't have a business to come back to. And that's the hardest part of balancing those two, because when you increase menu prices, the first thing you start to hear is like, they're just greedy, you know, and it's like, and that hurts.
It does.
That hurts immensely, because if they knew how many sleepless nights that we go through or we have before we even increase a menu price, they would probably think differently, you know, but all they see is like, you know, it went up a quarter, right. You know, it went up 50 cents or something. They're like, they're just greedy. But if you, like, all your groceries everywhere have gone up, your utilities have gone up, your insurance has gone up, like rent's gone up, everything has gone up. But for some reason, people don't look at the restaurant business and go, they're greedy, right?
That's
like
right.
McDonald's goes up on their prices and they cut down their portion sizes.
That's right.
And nobody bats an eye at that, you know? And we have a very strong like core value when it comes to the food that we put out. I want to be proud of the food, and I want you to be full when you leave. So instead of cutting down portions, I will increase menu price before I cut down portions, right? But at some point, where's that balance? You know?
And that's the crux of what this class is about. So if we're able to find those people that have the passion for hospitality, and we're able to give them at least this precursor, we're going to be producing students that are ready to go right out of the gate, that understand that both sides of it. And that's really the focus and mission of what that is. And the last thing I'll say is, to your point, it's the relationships.
Yes.
You know, and that's comes in a lot of different fashions, rather from your employees to your guests, through the relationship, through the food, through the relationship that you have from a care level of trying to impact, you know, your employees' lives and your guests' lives. And, you know, long-term restaurants, I used to always say, I don't want to be a trend, I want to be a tradition. And how do you become a tradition? And that is the relationship you make every day at your restaurant, that first start, that first handshake, whether that's through the food or the employees that represent you or yourself. That's where it starts. But the handshake turns into a pat on the back, to a hug and beyond, with how you cultivate those relationships, and you continue to stay ahead of the game in your food and create new dishes and find that great new personality that's going to create a new day for that guest that's one of your best regulars, or that creates the handshake for that first one that came in there for the first time. And, you know, I think the people in this business that forget about the relationship piece, and including your vendors and the people that you work with to get the job done, you know, when you forget about that, then I think you begin to become a trend and you disappear. The tradition is where you go, and that tradition is taking the handshake and turning it into a hug or a kiss, or being a part of someone's wedding or graduation and impacting life. And I will credit Ruffin. And, you know, his celebrate life mentality is part of that and really encapsulates what we do, because I want to look back to your point and say, you know, look, that was my employee and now they're the CEO of this company, or they are running multiple restaurants, or that chef that wins that James Beard, or, you know, in my case, 2 people that I know that work as servers that were on the Food Network in different roles. So that's the enrichment. That's what makes you rich. And it's, you get rich in the relationship of this business. And yes, is it hard sometimes? Damn right. But is it worth it?
It is hard. Yeah.
It truly is worth it.
I love it, man. Well, thank you so much for coming in today, man. I thought I knew you well before, but I haven't even scratched the surface of Stephen Hightower.
Well, we need to flip the script and let me get the same thing out of you, and we can go through yours.
So the next time we talk, I want you to ask me questions.
I love it.
And then I'll tell you my side of the story, because similar but different at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? So I would love for that.
I think we should do it.
We will do that.
I love it. I'm in.
Dude, it's going to be so cool.
Thank you very much for having me.
Dude, thank you for coming.
Appreciate it.